Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the second SharePad webinar. Just a reminder before I start that if you haven't already done so, just adjust your quality settings so they are on the highest available option, which for most people should be 720p. Hopefully once you've done that, you'll get the best quality screen image and therefore you'll be able to follow everything I'm going to do. Now, today's webinar I'm going to focus on technical analysis. So we're going to have a look at the charts in SharePad. We're going to look at what the charts are capable of doing. I'm going to give you some ideas of how you add things, how you change things, how you can generally set the charts up to look the way you want them to look. After that, we're going to have a look at some filtering, and we're going to actually filter on some technical analysis patterns within SharePad and see the results. And then after that, we're going to have a look at the alarms and how we can use the alarms to help us notify us of when certain patterns are achieved during the day. So to start with, you can see I've got the split screen here. Let's go to the SharePad. There we go, there's SharePad. And we'll close chat. So I've got the split screen open, and you can see I've got my list on the left, and we're on Anglo-American, and I've got my chart on the right. So as we're going to be concentrating on the chart view, I'm going to make the chart view full screen, and I'm going to do so using my green maximize view button at the top. So there we go, I'm now on just a chart, and for the most part of the training session we're going to concentrate, or at least the first part of the training session, we're going to concentrate on looking at the chart in the full screen view. Now, charts in SharePad are all based around settings. And a setting is like a template, and it dictates everything about the chart that you can see on the screen. So for example, the chart we're looking at the moment, we can see is a 1 year chart. If we look up here in the top left corner, you can see we've got 1 year as the range selected. We're using open, high, low, close bars, and you can see it says pounds daily bars, so they're daily as well up there on the top left. You can see that we have volume applied, we have an analytic called the MACD applied, and we have an analytic called the RSI applied. You can see we also have a grey line on the chart, and that is a moving average, and we will come to that a little bit later on. You can also see that I have the crosshair turned on, so I can see both the date and the price wherever I'm pointing the crosshair. Now all of that is determined by the fact we are on a particular setting, and in this case the setting we're on is called buy and hold. And if we draw our attention to the bottom of our screen, you can see I have a grey button labelled buy and hold. You can also see to the left of that I have the setting option on which we can see buy and hold. If I click on this setting option, you can see it brings up a menu on which we have several chart settings that have been pre-designed just as examples for you to have a look at, and then we have various options that we can actually use to modify settings, such as renaming them, copying them, or deleting them. Let's have a look. Let's say I go to Intraday Candles. Now I used the setting menu there to change to Intraday Candles. What I could have done is I could have just clicked on the button at the bottom of the screen for speed. Intraday Candles is a vastly different setting to buy and hold. Here, rather than a year's worth of data, we have 1 week. Rather than daily bars, we have 30-minute candlesticks. So we're looking at a much shorter time period with a much smaller, in this case, candlesticks rather than bars. So we're looking at movement within a shorter time frame, and we can get a much better idea of how the price is moving just within the last week. If I were to select the intraday line chart, for example, you can see that this particular setting is very different indeed. We've got a much darker colour scheme going on. We have shading at the top and the bottom of the chart, which represents the offer and the bid, where the dark area between them represents the spread. And we have a midline. This is a stepped midline. and we are just showing the data for one day. So you can see that the different settings really do change the way the chart looks and behaves. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new setting, and then we're going to look how we can change it and change the different options within it to design a setting that we might want to use. So the first thing we have to do is we have to come back down to the setting pop-up at the bottom left of the screen, and as I said before, we have various options, and the second one from the bottom we can see is create new. If I click on create new, I have the setting name and I need to give it a name. Now it's got new setting. That's not going to tell me much if I have to come back and look at this particular setting, say in a week's time, month's time. So I need to give it a name that is more descriptive. In this case, I'm going to call it Daily Candles 6 months, and I'm going to click on OK. Now the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed that I made a deliberate mistake in the spelling of my name. I called it Candles, spelled E-L-S. So what I can do is, if I have made a mistake with the name or I wish to change the name, I can come back to my setting menu and I can choose the option rename this setting. And I can remove the E, add the E there, we go, and click on OK, and we can see the name is now correct. Now, the standard setting that you will create when you create a new one looks very much like we have on the screen. So we have a 1 year range, we have daily bars, and we have volume, but we have no other analytics at all. So the first thing I'd like to do is to change the range. Up here on the top toolbar we have various buttons which let us change certain information with regards to the charts. The first option we have is we can actually opt to show all of the data available for the share we have selected. So in this case, for Anglo-American, we have data going back to 1999. We can see this right down the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Down here it says 1999. We can go back to our 1 year option. Now, our 1 year option is a custom option, and to change that, we use the custom button. If I click on the custom button, we have various options we can select. We have last end trading days, number of weeks, number of months, number of years. We have from date or display all data. Now, for example, you can see from date, it says 01/01/2014. I could display the date from the last low of the FTSE 100, for example. So when we had the last sort of mini crash, or I could do it from the beginning of the year, so I could change that to 01/01/2016. If I was going to be creating an intraday chart using, say, bar size of 15 minutes or 1 minute, then I may want to just do a number of trading days. In this case, and for the purposes of this tutorial, I want a number of months, and I'm going to go with 6. So you can see I've selected number of months, and I've entered 6 into the box, and then I'm just going to click on OK. And you can see, hopefully now, that by choosing a range of 6 months, that I've shortened the data range, but I've made my bars clearer. Next up on the toolbar at the top of the screen is the bars button. If I click on bars, you can see that it enables me to change the bar size, and we can go from 1 minute all the way up to 1 month. Now, for the purposes of the setting that I've created, I called it Daily Candles. So we're just going to leave it on 1 day. Next along on the toolbar we have the chart button, And the chart button enables us to quickly select different ways in which we wish to view the data on the chart. I have the option to do midline. I have the option to do clothesline, which in this case, because we are looking at that bar sizes that are greater than 1 day or 1 day or greater, the midline and the clothesline will be the same. If we were looking at bar sizes of less than 1 day, so say a 30-minute chart, then the clothesline and the midline would actually plot differently, as we saw when we looked at the intraday line setting earlier. We can choose open, high, low, close bars, but we've seen that before. We can choose candlesticks, we can choose hiking ashy, which are a variation of candlesticks, and if we wish we can also choose point and figure. But for this setting I specifically called it daily candles, so we want candlesticks. And there we go, very quickly changed to candlesticks. Now traditionally candlesticks are hollow if they are rising, like this candlestick here, or any of these three really, and they are solid or filled if they are falling. Now a rising candlestick is one where the close is above the open, and a falling candlestick is one where the close is below the open. Now candlesticks may be traditionally hollow and filled and black and white if you like, but because we have modern technology we are able to apply colours to them. In order to do this we actually have to come down to the bottom left of the chart and select the design button. When we select the design button you can see a dialog opens and we have 4 tabs across the top of the screen: chart, axes, style and volume. And you can see we're already on chart and it has the main chart type already selected as candlesticks. And if we click on this option you can see that it gives us exactly the same options as the chart button at the top of the toolbar up here. Just leave on candlesticks. Below that you can see we have the colouring mode and we have 3 options: single colour, close relative to close, or close relative to open. Now as I just explained, candlesticks are based on the close relative to the open. So if we're going to colour them, we're going to use that option to colour them. So there you go, I've selected close to open and you can see I have an up colour and a down colour. The up colour at the moment is black and the down colour is red. Now I'm quite happy with my down colour being red, but I'd like to change my up colour. So if we click on our little colour picker you can see that we have a vast array of options. Now some people will prefer to have their up colour as blue, or you may choose a different colour entirely if you wish to. In this case I'm going to choose a green, so I have green up and red down. If I just click on preview you can see my changes implemented on the chart. So let's just move the dialog over a little bit and you may be able to see them better. You can see that my rising candlesticks are now green and my falling candlesticks are now red. But my rising candlesticks are still hollow. If I wish to, I can actually fill these in. And we can see on the dialog, if I just move this back over to the middle of the screen again, at the bottom of the chart tab, on the chart design dialog, we have fill rising candlesticks. Now if we click on preview, hopefully you can see that we have solid rising candlesticks. And by using green and red we're now able to differentiate between them just as easily as we could if they were hollow or filled. Between the main chart option and the candlesticks option we have the option for the bid offer shading. Now that's only relevant if we're looking at an intraday chart where bid and offer are relevant during the day, and you saw the bid and offer shading on the intraday line setting. So this is something you might want to consider if you are creating an intraday chart, so a chart with bar sizes of say sort of 15 minutes, 10 minutes, those sorts of sizes yourself. Next up on the chart design dialog window, we have axes. And you can see we have various options that refer to the axes. At the top we have show future, and we have percentage of range 20%. This relates to the space we have between our last candlestick and our right hand edge of our chart. If you wish, you may wish to have none at all, in which case the chart will draw right up to the right hand edge of the chart. You have various options within show future. You have, for example, end of current day, which is really only useful for, say, a chart looking at maybe a week of intraday data, or even a daily chart. You have end of current year, you have percentage of range, and then we have a number of days, a number of hours, or a number of minutes. I'm just going to put it back on percentage of range for now, but I'm going to reduce 20% down to 10%. I'm doing this because 20% of my chart is quite a lot. 20%, as you saw, was a significant portion of a chart with a 6-month chart. 10% still gives me plenty of space on the right hand side, but just not as much. Next up on the axis tab, we have the y-axis options, and you can see at the moment the left y-axis says none and the right y-axis says price. If I click on the left y-axis, you can see I have options for none, price, start at 0% and start at 100%. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to start at 0%. The right y-axis I'm going to leave on price. If I now click preview, you can see that my left hand y-axis now shows a percentage range, and it will start at 0 with the first price point for the first date of the chart as you have it selected. If I had more range and more data selected on my chart, then this would be 0%, but it would be 0% at a different value, but it would still be that starting date, the value that it used. In doing this, we can see that Anglo-American, over the period shown on the chart, which is 6 months, has gone up just under 100%, a little bit over 90% with the jump on the candlestick today. About 95, I would guess. The right y-axis labels option allows us to add certain information to the right axis. At the moment, you can see we've got show latest price ticked, and you can see the latest price is shown in the right hand axis. We've got show value at cursor, which I discussed a little bit earlier when I was looking at buy and hold, but it gives me the value wherever my cursor is pointing. We also have an option that says show analytic values, and I'm going to tick that, and we'll see as I add some analytics to the chart in a little while just how that behaves. Next up, I'm going to select the Style tab. The Style tab allows me to change much of the colour options for everything that's going on around the chart that's not the main price display. So the grid, for example, I can choose whether or not to draw the grid and what colour the grid is. This is the grid here, and the horizontal and vertical lines. The frame is the frame that goes around the chart. Again, if I wanted to, I could change the colour or opt not to draw it. Auction periods. Auctions we see during the day on the intraday charts. There was an auction bar on the intraday line charts. We see them at midday and often before or at the start of the day, and you will also see them during the day if there has been quite significant price movements and the London Stock Exchange has put the share into an auction. On the left here you can see we have the Tidham watermark colour. Now if I move the dialogue down, no, down's not going to do it, move it across a bit, there we go, you can just about see that we have our Tidham, which is LSE, which is the exchange, and then we've got AAL. And we can see it's quite a pale grey. So for example, I might want to click on the colour here, and I might want to just intensify the grey a little bit. If I click on preview, you can see that becomes a lot darker. Might make it a little bit easier to see. There's an option there for the market closed watermark. The intraday charts will tell you if the market's closed. Some people like that, some people don't. Just below that we have a graduated fill option. Now you may or may not be able to see that the chart starts at the top as being grey, and then gradually by the time we get to the bottom of the chart it's white. If I change the top colour, let's say I choose a blue, and I hit on preview, it'll become much more apparent. There you go, so you have a graduated fill. Now I'm actually going to turn that off by unticking it or deselecting it. And you can see that my background now is completely white. And you can see at the top of this dialog, I sort of skipped over the background colour a minute ago, we have the background colour, and if I wish to change the background colour to a different solid colour, I could do so using that option. Down on the right hand side here we have show percentage change, and you can just about see the percentage change showing that Anglo-American is up by 5 point something %. Now I can deselect that if I want to, or I can decide to change the colours. Again, I might just wish just to enhance the green and enhance the red a little, just to make them stand out more on the back of the chart. Next up is the volume tab. The volume, as we can see at the moment, is shown at the bottom of our chart as a separate window. You can see on the dialog, we can turn the volume chart on and off if we wish to. If I click it off and hit preview, you can see that's it off. If I turn it back on again and click preview, you can see that's it back on again. To the right of that, we see we have the option merge volume with price chart. If I tick that and click on preview, you can see we now have the volume histogram actually drawing on the same window as our chart. Now at the moment the colour of the volume is very much the same as my green bar, so I may wish to just change the colour of the volume. So let's just make it black. There we go. This option exists because we recognise that space is of a premium, especially if you're using a tablet. And so it may well be, especially if you've got extra analytics added as well, that you wish to just put the volume onto the chart in this way to save a little bit of screen space. I'm actually going to just turn this option off. Below this we have the signal line. Now the signal line is a moving average, and it's simple moving average of the volume, and it gives us an idea of, on average, how much volume is traded for the particular stock we're looking at. And this then enables us to identify whether there has been a significant spike in the volume. At the moment this has been set to 25 periods. I'm going to set it to 21 periods. A period is the same as the bar size or the candlestick size that is selected for your chart. So at the moment I have daily candlesticks, so my periods are days. So this is a 21 day average. I've chosen 21 because that is the value I use for a trading month. If we take 252 trading days in a year, then 252 is equally divisible by 12 and goes into 21. This means we can then do 3 months as 63 trading days, or 6 months, for example, which would be 126 trading days, or 1 month as I've done it here as 21. Just going to click on OK, and you can see it's drawn my signal line for my average volume on my volume chart. Now that blue isn't particularly very strong, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go back into design, back onto volume, and let's just make this a much stronger blue. There we go. Now let's click on OK. There we go. Okay, so they're most of the options that you'll find in the design button down in the bottom left hand side of the chart. If I now go back to the top of the chart, you'll see that we got to the chart button and then I diverted back down to design. So let's look at the add menu. So we click on add and we can see we have various options. Now I will come back to Show Legend in a little while, once I've put some items onto the chart for which the legend will become relevant. So if we skip over Show Legend for the moment and let's just have a look at events. Now events enable us to add different flags to the chart, flags that we may find relevant. And you can see we have various options. We have company dates, we have directors' dealings, we have major holdings dealings effectively, and we have portfolio transactions that come from your actual own personal portfolios. Just to show you what they're like, I'm just going to tick the ex-dividend date option and I'm going to tick the dividend pay date option, and then I'm going to click on OK. And we have no dividends. Let's see if we can find a share with some on. So I'm just going to press the space bar. And there you go, Antofagasta. You can see down here we have an X and a D. So the X is where it went ex-dividend and the D is where it got paid. So if we click on the X, you can see it actually has a pop-up message associated to it. Oh, let's just do that again. It says ex-dividend on the 8th of September 2016, interim dividend, and it keeps disappearing. Let's click on it once more to 2.35 pence. And if we click on the D, it says 2.35 pence paid on the 30th of September. Next up on the add menu is moving averages. Now, moving averages are possibly the first analytic type that people will look into if they ever start looking into technical analysis. They draw lines on the charts that are designed to remove a lot of the price noise, which is the movements that you see, rather than just looking at the actual trends. And in other words, they smooth the charts. So let's have a look at moving averages. We're going to click on it. And as we have yet to add a moving average to our chart, it automatically opens the Edit Moving Average dialog box. You can see we have two options at the top. We have Show MA, so show the moving average, and the moving average color. And then below that, we have Show Channel. Now, a channel is a pair of lines that are drawn both above and below the moving average. And form a channel. Now, there are four types. There are Bollinger Envelope, Stark and Keltner. Envelope and Bollinger are by far the most popular. Envelopes draw an exact replica above and below the chart, a percentage above and below the chart, sorry, so 5% in this case, above and below the chart. Bollinger Bands go one step further. They draw a line above and below the moving average, and instead of using a percentage, they use a number of standard deviations. So, for example, here I could put 2.0 standard deviations, and I could tick Show Channel. So I have a simple 10-period moving average, the most basic type, just 10 periods, and I'm going to draw a Bollinger Band channel around it. So then we're going to click on OK. We're going to click on OK again. You can see it's created the moving average here for me, and you can see it says that the 10-period simple moving average is on, and the 2 standard deviations Bollinger Band is on. And we're just going to click on OK, and it looks something like that. Now, Bollinger Bands, by the fact they use standard deviations, give us a measure of volatility. So you can see where they narrow, the volatility is low, and where they widen, the volatility is high. So let's go back and edit that moving average. So we're going to go to Add, and I actually want to change this moving average. I don't want the Bollinger Bands on the chart for the rest of the webinar. So let's go back to moving averages. I'm going to edit the one that I have drawn. This time I'm going to turn off Show Channel, and I'm going to change the type of moving average I'm drawing from simple to exponential. Now, you have various types of averages for moving averages. We have simple, exponential, weighted, triangular, variable CMO, variable VHF, Vidya and whole available. So I'm going to put this one on exponential, and I'm going to make it a 6-period exponential moving average. Now, I've already used red on my chart to represent my down candles. So to make sure my moving averages stand out, I'm going to change the colour, and I'm going to make this one a nice strong blue colour. And I'm going to click on OK. I also want to create a second moving average so that we can look at one of the most common technical analysis signals, which is a golden or a dead cross. So I'm going to create a second one. I'm going to use a slightly longer period this time. I want it to also be an exponential moving average, but this time I'm going to use 21 periods. Now again, don't forget periods refers to the size of my candlesticks, which are daily. You can see that top left of the chart. This time, I don't want a red moving average, I'm going to make it purple. I'm going to click on OK. I'm going to click on OK. So there we go, we have two moving averages, a blue one and a purple one. And if I came back to look at this chart, I might think to myself, well, what exactly is that blue moving average and what exactly is that purple moving average? And the way to tell that is to use the legend. So if we go back to the Add drop down and we select Show Legend, we have the 6 EMA and the 21 EMA. You can see this at the top left here. You can also see that when I was in the design dialog and I ticked Show Analytic Values, that the current value of both the moving averages is now shown and color coded in the right hand margin. Next up on the Add menu, we have trend lines. We have price, donkey and channels. Trend lines draw a linear regression line. Price, donkey and channels track the highs and lows. We have pivot points, we have parabolic SAR, we have Ichimoku charts, and we have zigzag charts. Now you can find out more about most of these by looking on our training zone. If I come up to the top right of the screen, you'll see I have my settings button, my little cog. And if I click on that, you can see I have various options, but the the bottom left I have help, and then I have the option for the training zone. We just have a quick look at the training zone. The training zone is full of various videos and articles that relate to various aspects of the program. You can also see there is a link to last week's webinar, which covers more to do with fundamentals and lists tables. So that's the training zone. Well worth having a look at the training zone. Lots of information there about how to get the most out of SharePad. So if I come back to SharePad, I go back to Add. What I would like to do though is I would like to have a look at additional charts. Now when I put an additional chart on to my graph, what I'm doing is I'm plotting a rebased version of that chart onto the screen. So let's do the FTSE 100 and that will become clearer. I could do the share or index option, and this would let me say find the FTSE 350, FTSE all share list, one of the AIM indices, or a specific share, or maybe a gold commodity if I wish to. Instead I'm going to do the FTSE 100 index. Now I've selected the FTSE 100 index, I'm just going to click on create, and it says show additional chart, and I have the option to show the share price or the ratio. The share price, for the purposes of what I'm about to demonstrate, is exactly what we want. Again, I don't want it to be red. In this case I'm just going to make it black. It'll make it stand out and it'll make it easy to understand what it's doing. And I'm going to click on OK, and I'm going to click on OK. And you can now see that I have a black line on my chart. And you can see that it will start at 0% on the left hand side of my chart, and I can see that this, using the crosshair, which is the FTSE 100, has gone up about 11%, possibly 12, but about 11%. That's about 11% since the 23rd of May. So we can see the date down the bottom left hand corner of the screen here, the 23rd of May, in the last 6 months effectively. Whereas, if I use my crosshair to find the current point of Antofagasta, Antofagasta has gone up by about 62.5% over the same period. So Antofagasta is outperforming the FTSE 100 by quite a considerable amount over this particular period. You can also see that on our legend it now has the black and FTSE 100, and it also has it written up on the green title bar. So I have Antofagasta PLC and the FTSE 100 index. Now I don't necessarily need that on for the rest of this training session, this webinar, so I'm actually just going to go and delete it. So I'm going to go into Add, I'm going to go to Additional Charts, and like with most dialogues, I have the option to delete it if I want to, but I also have the option to deselect it. In doing so, it's still set up and I can still draw it on the chart again if I wish to, rather than if I delete it, then it's gone for good and I have to completely recreate it from scratch. So I'm just going to deselect it, click on OK, and there we go, you can see it's no longer being drawn. Before I go on to look at indicators, I'd just like to look at a couple of functions on the chart that we haven't yet covered. The first is zooming. Now, if you're on a tablet and you wish to zoom, you have to deselect the crosshair. The green plus button up on the top toolbar here turns the crosshair on and off, so you can see if I deselect it, it turns the crosshair off. If I select it, it turns the crosshair on again. If you're on a tablet and you want to zoom, you have to turn the crosshair off first. If you're on a laptop or a desktop PC or a Mac, what you do is you move to where you want to start zooming. You hold down the left mouse button, you select a portion of the chart you want to zoom into, and then you release the mouse, and you can see we zoom in. And we can repeat that. We can zoom in time and time again. So we can zoom in there, we can hold down the left mouse button, select an even smaller period of the chart and zoom in, and you can see we're drilling down further and further. Now, because I've zoomed, in the top left of the chart you will see hopefully that there is a button labelled Reset Zoom, and I can click on that and it will take me back to where my chart was, the 6-month chart. The other thing we can do with the charts, which is quite nifty, is we can scroll them. So if I bring my cursor down to the bottom of the screen, you can see it changes to a hand. And when it changes to a hand, I can hold down the left mouse button. Oh, there we go. That's better. And it will scroll left, or hold down the left mouse button and it will scroll right. You should be able to just drag it with your finger near the bottom axis if you are on a tablet. You can see again that now I've been messing around with the scrolling, that the Reset Zoom button has come up again at the top left, and I can click on that and it will just reset me back to my 6-month range as we were before. So just to recap, you zoom by holding down the left mouse button, dragging across, and then releasing the mouse button. And you can also scroll by taking your mouse down to the bottom axis of the chart and holding down the left mouse button and dragging the chart left or right. Okay. Under indicators. Now, indicators, as we saw when we were looking at buy and hold, draw a window chart in a separate window at the bottom of the chart. In this case, I'd just like to add just the one. We're going to add the MACD, and we'll go to the MACD because it's got a nice little histogram. So I'm going to click on my drop down, I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to find the MACD, and now crucially, once I've selected the indicator, I have to click on Create. If I just click on OK, it'll just close the dialog. I have to click on Create. So I click on Create, and there we go. We can see it has now created a MACD indicator for me, which I can then click on Edit to change. Now you can see that I have my indicator, and I've no wish to change any of the indicator properties or the colours of the indicator or its signal. The signal line of the MACD is a moving average of the plot of the MACD. The MACD itself stands for Moving Average Convergence Divergence, and is the plot of the difference, so the gap between two exponential moving averages. So much like I have on my chart, I've plotted two exponential moving averages. This is using two slightly different periods to the ones on my chart, but the MACD itself actually plots the difference, the actual value difference between them. You can see it also draws a histogram, and the histogram shows the difference between the signal line and the MACD, and that will become clearer, I think, once we've actually added it. The only thing I want to change here is we have a dark green for negative, and I prefer to have red for my negatives, so I'm just going to select a red, actually maybe a slightly darker red. There we go, that'll do, and then I'm going to click on OK. And now I've set that up, I'm going to click on OK, and we can see I've added my MACD at the bottom of my chart. Now at the moment it's in a sort of a narrowish window. I want to make it a bit bigger so that I can discuss it just a little bit. So I'm going to take my cursor to the line at the top of the indicator, and I'm going to hold down the left mouse button, and you can see I've changed to a double-ended arrow, and I can drag it up and make it a lot bigger. If you're on a tablet, you should be able to just put your finger at that on that line and just drag it up. If I want to reset it back to where it was, I just take the mouse till the cursor changes, and I just click, and it'll go back to where it was. I'm just going to drag it back up again because I want it back up. If you're on a tablet, you can just tap on that line and it will reset back to where it was. Now with the MACD, we can see that the MACD crosses its signal line, and when it crosses its signal line we have buy and sell signals. So if we look at the most recent, you can see the MACD crossed above the pale red signal line just here, and we can see that the histogram is showing us the difference between those, and so because the MACD has crossed above the histogram, it turns green. So it's a really strong indicator as to when that happens. And you can see up here that the chart has gone on to take off and accelerate upwards. Now you can add 4, 5, 6, 7 indicators on the chart if you want to, as many as you like in theory. As you add them, that basically they will become narrower and narrower and narrower, so it depends on what sort of screen space you have as to how many you might wish to add. I'm just going to reset my MACD back down to the level at the bottom. Okay, after indicators, oh actually, before I go on, if we go back to indicators, again, you can see that if I wish to, I can turn the MACD on and off just by using the select and deselect button. I can edit it if I want to, I can delete it, or I can create another indicator below the MACD should I wish to. Just going to cancel out of that. Next up we have draw. Now draw enables us to draw a line on the chart. So we're just going to click on draw, we're going to click on line, and you can see my cursor has now changed to a crosshair, and so I can bring my mouse down to where I want to start, hold down my mouse button, a little bit like zoom in, keeping it held down. You can see I drag out a line and I can then release. Now you can see the line is currently selected and it has a square at the beginning and a square at the end. If I click on the actual chart itself, you can see those squares disappear and the line is no longer selected. If I click on the line itself again, now that the line is selected, you can see that my green buttons at the top of my chart have changed, and you can see I now have line options. And first up on my line options is style. If I click on style, you can see I can make the line narrower or thicker. You can see that it's set to auto color, or I can use the other button to change the color of my line. So I might click on other, and it's on a blue. Blue's quite a useful color. Let's make it a kind of an orange color. Click on OK. There you go, I now have an orange line. You can also see on style at the bottom of the style option I've got set as default style. Now at the moment, if I draw another line, it will draw black again as it drew the first time. If I do set as default style, the next line I draw will be the sort of goldy orange colour that I've chosen to draw my line with. Oh, I've deselected it. Let me select the line again. Next up on my line options, I have options. I almost trip over my tongue. And you can see I have such options as extend into the future. I can snap it to the bar close. Now you can see that at the moment I've drawn it to the high and the close of this bar is way down here. So if I snap it to the close, my right hand point is going to snap right down here, and my left hand point is actually going to rise up to nearer the close on that particular candlestick down here. I also have snap to bar high low, and I'm going to use that option to snap it. Now you might have just noticed that the line moved slightly, but if I now go to my end point and adjust my end point, so if I move my mouse over my end point and adjust it, you can see as I'm adjusting it, it's snapping to the high of each of the bars as we go along. Just going to leave it where it is. And the same if I adjust the other end, let's take it down to that low there. It's snapping to the low. Under options, I have other options. I can show the percentage change. I can show Fibonacci percentage, show Fibonacci values. I can make it a partial trend line, which is a linear regression line. I can do various options to it if I wish to. Next up, I have delete, which enables me to delete the line, and then I have duplicate, which enables me to create a copy, a parallel line, if I wish to draw, say, 2 lines on different parts of the charts just to measure, say, the trends. It's just going to delete this particular line. So you don't forget, you draw by using the draw options under the draw drop down. So hopefully that's given you some idea about how you can design a chart within SharePad. Before I move on to filtering, I just want to talk a little bit about the setting options down at the bottom left. So you can see we have our toolbar buttons, but I don't actually have one for my current setting. And you can see in the settings menu I have the option add this setting to toolbar. So if I click on that, it will actually create a button for my setting, which will make it easier for me to select in the future. So I can go back to buy and hold if I wanted to, and now my setting, daily candles, 6 months, is here on the right hand side. You can also see that I have the option to rename it, as we did earlier, but I also have the option to copy it. Let's say I've set my chart up the way I want it to be, but I want to use a similar setting, but I want to use a weekly chart rather than a daily chart. So what I can do is I can copy this setting, and I can call it weekly candles, and in this case I'm going to make it a 1 year chart. 1 year. I'm going to click on OK. So now if I go to bars, I can change it to 1 week. And you can see now why I indicated it be 1 year, because weekly candles on a 6 month chart, you don't actually draw that many candles. So let's go to my custom range and change it to 1 number of years. So we have 1 years. And then I'm going to click on OK. And there we go. I now have a weekly chart. Bear in mind the MACD and the moving averages and the volume are all now based on weekly data. Some people writing some questions into chat. What I'll do is I'll pick up on those towards the end of the session, which looks like it's going to be a little bit longer than an hour, the way I'm going. So let's go back to my daily candles. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you how to filter on some of this technical analysis we have within the program. So whilst we can draw our moving averages on our chart, and we could use the spacebar to go down and look at the technicals of each of the shares in line, and we can use shift and space to go back up, as was indicated in the chat room. We can use filtering to narrow down our search based on our requirements, so that we get to see just the shares we want to concentrate on. So if we go to our list view, so let's go back to our split view here. Now if you watched the first webinar, and if you haven't, it's well worth a watch. As I said, you can see it on the training zone. You'll know that we can go into filtering by using the pale blue filter button here at the top of the list view. What I'm going to do is going to make the list view full screen using the maximize blue button, and I'm going to click on filter, and we're going to create a new filter, and to do that we use apply filter. And you can see we've already got one in there called rising price. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over to the green button and click on new, and I need to give this filter a name, and I'm going to call it 6 EMA, as in exponential moving average, stroke 21 EMA golden cross. Now a golden cross is where the shorter period moving average, in this case the 6 period, crosses above the longer period moving average, which in this case is the 21 period moving average. And this should give us an indication that the share has moved into an uptrend and is in effect a buy signal. So click on OK. You can see that my moving average has now been created, and it is highlighted, so I can click on OK. And what happens is we get a table with 3 columns: number, TIDM and name, and At the top you can see we have the name of our filter, and to the right of this you can see we have an add criteria button and an exit button. We use the exit button to come completely out of filtering once we've finished looking at the results, but we're going to use the add criteria button to create our criteria. Now, adding criteria is the same as adding a column to a table, so it's the same dialog box if you're familiar with that. We want the technical option, which is the top right hand tab, and you can see when we select that, on the left hand side we have various crosses as options. We have dead cross, golden cross, MACD cross signal, but we're going to use golden cross for our example here. And when we select golden cross, you can see on the right hand side we have 4 quadrants. At the top left and top right we have our moving averages. At the bottom left we have our period size, and at the bottom right we have some extra options. So my 2 moving averages were both exponential. So my first one was a 6 period, but it was exponential, and my second one was a 21 period, but it was also exponential. My candlesticks are daily candlesticks, so I'm going to leave that on daily. And then on the right hand side you can see we have 2 options. We have a look back period, and it's currently set to 5. Now that tells us if a golden cross has happened in the last 5 trading days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. I'm just going to change it to 1, which means a golden cross has happened in the last trading day. We also have the option to do only true golden crosses. Now, true golden crosses are where the 21 exponential moving average is moving up as well as the 6 period moving average. So both are moving upwards, therefore it must be in an uptrend, so we have a stronger signal. And I'm going to tick that option, and then I'm going to click on OK. And what you can see is that my column has been added, my golden cross column, and you can see we actually have 1 tick in the column to indicate that a cross has happened for BGEO group. And at the top of the filter you can see we have our main bars turned orange, and we now have an apply button. And when we click on apply, it then applies the filter and reduces the list of shares down to, in this case, 13. At the moment you can see we're on the FTSE 350 list. You can see filtered FTSE 350 sorted by name. We could change it to a different list if we wanted to. We can choose the FTSE 100, the FTSE 350, or we could go into other lists and choose any of the lists available, say the US 500, which is the S&P 500 list. We could do the FTSE All Share, or we could do one of the AIM lists if we wish to. I'm going to leave it on the FTSE 350 just for the purposes of this exercise. I've got 13 results, that's plenty for my purposes. So now I've got my 13 results, now let's look at the chart. So I'm just going to click on the Maximise Green View button. And you can see, hopefully, that my 6 period EMA, which is my blue moving average, so I'm just pointing at the legend just to show that, has just crossed above my purple moving average, which is my 21 EMA. Should we just zoom in a little bit and have a look at that? There we go. If I zoom in, you can see that much clearer. The cross has happened. Now if I press the spacebar to go down my list of results, we can see we have Alliance Trust. And again, if I zoom in, you can see that's just crossed as well. Press spacebar again. And although we can't quite see them, I'm guessing due to the very nature of that very, very large candle, that those 2 moving averages would also have crossed. Again, you can see the cross just there without me zooming in, and I can space down my results and go and look through all 13 shares if I wish to. Let's go back to my list. So that's a fairly simple golden cross filter. Let's try a filter with 2 criteria this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at shares where the MACD has crossed above its signal, like we looked at a little bit earlier, but also that the MACD is below 0. Now the MACD oscillates around 0, and some people believe it's a stronger signal if it's below 0, so we're going to add two criteria. The first one, that the MACD has crossed above its signal. The second one, that the MACD is below 0. So we're going to create a new filter. So we're going to go up to Filter and Apply Filter, and we're going to click on New, and we're going to do MACD signal cross below 0. So actually, let's just put a little hyphen in there to separate the two. There we go. So MACD signal cross and below 0, just as a note that we're also doing that as well. Don't need to put a description in. I could if I wish to, but I think my title is quite descriptive enough. I'm going to click on OK. It's the highlighted filter. We're going to click on OK. You can see here I have my Add Criteria button again, a brand new table for the brand new filter. So we're going to click on Add Criteria. We're already on Technical, and we want MACD crossed signal. So we're going to select MACD cross signal. I didn't change any of the MACD periods when we applied them to our chart. It's on daily down here in the bottom left hand quadrant. So all that I'm interested in are my options on the right. I don't want to do a look back. We're going to leave that on 1, and we can do that it has crossed above or it has crossed below. In this case we're going to do crossed above, and we're going to click on OK. So we didn't really actually change anything apart from the look back we set to 1. So again, we have our column that's been added and our orange bar has appeared, and we can click on our Apply button, and you can see we have a whole series of results. But I want to go one step further, and I want to add another criteria. So let's click on the Add Criteria button. And this time I want to know that the MACD is below 0. So I'm going to go on the left hand side, and rather do crosses, I'm going to come down and select Values. And you can see I have MACD. So I'm going to select MACD, and you can see that the periods are all correct. It's daily, which is exactly what we want, and it's already on latest value. I can look at things like the change, the percentage change, the value a number of periods ago, but I just want the latest value. So I'm just going to click on OK. And now when I've added this one, you can see that we've got a whole series of numerical results. And the criteria has been added, and it has a minimum and a maximum. Now, if we want it below 0, we want our maximum to be just ever so slightly smaller than 0. So in this case, I'm going to use minus 0.01. So that's about as close to 0 as you're going to get without actually putting in 0. I'm going to click on Apply. And you can see we now have 14 results, and you can see all of these show that the current MACD value is below 0 to some degree or another. Green coat, let's have a select of that one, is minus 0.2, so only just below 0. So let's have a look at that on the chart. So we're going to come up to our Maximize Green View button. Have a look at that chart. This time we're looking at the MACD, and let's make it larger again. Where's my, there we are. You can see it says it's 0.18, and it's just below 0. But it's still crossed. It's crossed above. You can see that the histogram has turned green. So it's meeting our criteria exactly as we have established them. Go back to my list. Now, one thing I will say is that at the moment there are only a certain number of items on which you can filter from a technical analysis perspective. But we are working to increase that. Hopefully in the not too distant future you'll find that you'll be able to filter on pretty much any indicator or analytic that you can add in SharePad, which should make filtering, or open up filtering to a whole raft of new options. So before I sign off, I want to have a quick look at alarms. Now, alarms in SharePad are a green view, so I'm going to switch back to my green view, and then I'm going to select alarms. And in fact, what I could do, because they're not that wide, I'll do a split view. And rather than be in a filtered list on the left, I'm going to exit my list and just be back into the normal FTSE 350 list. I'm just going to select right move. So what I'm going to do is going to click on search, select RMV, and click on OK. There we go, there's right move. And you can see we have various alarm options that we can set. Now, alarms are set in SharePad on a per share basis. So we could do such things as look at whether the share has risen or fallen by a given percentage. Obviously, if it's fallen by, say, 10%, we'd want to know about it. So we might set an alarm in that regard. We can set price rises above or price falls below specific levels. Now, it's populated those with levels based on the current price, but obviously you would choose your own. Then we can do a stop loss alarm. Now, a stop loss is a trailing stop loss, so as the price rises, the stop loss will rise, and then as the price falls, the stop loss won't fall until the price eventually hits the stop loss line and it becomes breached. Before I set a stop loss alarm, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look back at Rightmove's chart. So let's maximize the green view and go back to Rightmove's chart. Now, if we look at the MACD, let's just put the MACD back down. There we go, to where it was before. We can see the MACD crossed on the 12th of July. So let's make an assumption that we bought on that date. And when we bought, we decided we wanted to set a stop loss. So let's draw a stop loss on the chart. And the way we do that is we go to Add. And you can see there's a per share option. And we have stop loss. And we can click on stop loss, and you can see we can draw the stop loss at 10% of the price, and we need our start date. Well, the start date was the 12th of July, so I'm just going to type in 12/07/2016, and then I'm going to click on OK. And you can see on the chart that our stop loss has started here, and as the price has gone up, it's risen, and it's kept rising until the share has started to fall back. And eventually you can see it has been breached, and you can see it actually shows you a circle where it was breached on the 25th of October. So now if I go back to my alarms for Rightmove and we look at the stop loss alarms, we can see it says a stop loss at 5% from the 22nd of November. And what we need to do is we need to be able to change that information, and what we do is we just click on the grey bar, and when we click on the grey bar it expands the alarm options, and you can see we can change them as required. So in this case we set a 10% stop loss, and we set it from the 12th of July 2016. And you can see now on the grey bar it actually says stop loss at 10% from the 12th of July 2016. And you can see it's also added the trash can for deleting the alarm, and the plus symbol, which would allow us to create another stop loss alert if we wish to set a slightly different one. Maybe we purchased the share at a different time in a different portfolio. You can see on the left hand side of the alarm we have an envelope, and that it signifies that you will be emailed an alert, and we have a tick box which indicates that the alarm has been turned on. Now I want to be emailed if this happens, and it will send me an email even if I'm not logged in. So no matter where I am, I will still get the email, and then I will be able to act upon this particular alert. If I select the envelope, then it will automatically turn the alarm on as well, and when I do so, the alarm will trigger. Now the reason it's triggered is because I've set a retrospective alarm, and as we saw on the chart, we knew it was going to breach on the 25th of October. But in this way I'm able to show you an alert as it actually happens and as it looks in the program. So we can see we've got our alert pop up. It tells us Rightmove has triggered on the 25th of October. And we could click on Rightmove. Actually we need the list selected to do this. let's say we're on a different share like Saga. If we click on right move in the alert window, it will actually jump us to right move. And then we could, if we wanted to, we could look at the chart and we can see, oh yes, it breached. So obviously you'll set this alarm up. Perhaps you bought at the low here earlier in November, and you'd have your stop loss tracking, and if the price then fell down, you'd get your alert. We just go back to the alarms view. We have various other alarms you can set up. I'm just going to show you the moving average, golden and dead cross options. So again, I click on this, and we get a drop down. And you can see we have golden crosses and dead crosses, so it alerts on either. And you can see I have my short and my long periods. We change the types to exponential when we set them on a chart, so I'm going to change them to exponential in the alarm. The periods is set to daily, that's absolutely fine. And again, I'm going to turn this on and ask it to send me an email. And you can see that it's telling me that Rightmove had a golden cross. So let's again look at the chart, and we can see that that is indeed the case. You see the golden cross has happened. So what we might have is we might have a portfolio of certain shares that we're looking at. We might have identified them by their fundamental data, for example, and then we want to know when the technical analysis is right. So then we might set up alarms on each of those shares in our portfolio, and then it will alert us when we get a buy signal, and then we can make the decision as to whether we want to open a position on those particular shares or not. If I just look back at the alarms view, you can see we have four options at the top. I have alarms and I have alerts, and you can see if I go to alerts, I have the two alerts that I've got triggered, and then I have current share and I have all. Now at the moment we're looking at the alerts for the current share. I could look at the alerts for all. Now they won't change, but if I did have more alerts for more shares within SharePad, then I would see a complete list of all the alerts that have triggered, as it says, in the last 30 days. If I switch back to alarms when I'm on all, you can see it just shows me the two alarms I've got set. And if I'd set more alarms up on other instruments, then it would also show me those alarms as well. And you can see that I have the trash cans so that I can delete them, or I can actually turn them off should I wish to. Now again, there's plenty of information about setting alarms on the training zone, or if you've got any questions, you can always ask them into chat, and my colleague Richard has been answering some questions, but I'm quite happy to also go over anything that if someone posts in chat at the moment. Other than that, I have actually finished for this webinar. Again, thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully you've picked something up. This webinar will be available to watch. You'll be able to access it on both our YouTube channel, and there'll be a link in the training zone if you're looking to find it at a later date. Oh, sorry, I didn't show you my emails. Yep, so let's come to my emails. There you go. So there's my email. It says there's a new alert, so we click on that, and you can see my stop loss alarm triggered. And I can actually then be prompted to sign in. So I had my email open specifically for that purpose. Let's just go back to SharePad. Anybody got any more questions you want me to answer whilst you have me? If not, the other thing is, I have mentioned the training zone. Don't forget you can also contact support. If we go to the options menu, you can see contact support, and that will give us both our email address and our phone number. We are open from 8 till 6. We are there to help you with anything to do with SharePad. Just give us a call and we will do our best to spend as little or as much time as needed to help you with whatever query you've got. Okay, I'm sure my colleague Richard Chiesa is currently looking at chat, so if there are any more questions, I'm sure he'd be quite happy to answer them for you. I'm going to end the webinar here. Thank you very much again for joining me. And look out for the next one, which will possibly be in a week's time or so, when we'll be looking at things like portfolios and maybe layouts as well, but we'll let you know in due course.